Coming up next on the Retirement Halftime Show, choosing the right financial advisor for you. These 3 tips could save you time and money. Then, 3 options for leaving an inheritance to children who are minors. We'll detail the pros and the cons to help you make the right decision. And Andrea Moorhead reports on plans to create a living memorial for pioneers who made our community a better place for all. Then, how reviewing the past makes you a winner for tomorrow. Advice you can use in life and in investing. From Purdue basketball coach Matt Painter, now on the Retirement Halftime Show.
You wouldn't play a game the second half the same way you would the first, especially if you have the lead. This is the Retirement Halftime Show, helping you maintain your lead in retirement.
Welcome to the Retirement Halftime Show. I'm Heather McWilliams, joined by Alex Joyce with ReJoyce Financial. Alex, hiring a financial advisor is one of those pivotal moments in your life. It's like that fork in the road, which is really going to dictate your financial future. I think for a lot of people, they just don't know who to go to, and they're afraid to ask how much it costs.
That's the truth.
Yeah.
You know, I think regulation has tried to clean some of that up because especially the Department of Labor has really stepped in and tried to make things transparent in the way of disclosing things like fees or the type of advisor you're working with, incentives, commissions.
Yeah.
And I think that's really good. I think anybody that first and foremost is concerned about what it costs to hire them or engage into their firm or practice, they should be working with a fiduciary, right? And that is making sure that everything is disclosed and that firm has a legal obligation not just to disclose, but put your needs above their own. I think it's very important, not to be taken lightly.
Yeah.
But I think that when hiring an advisor, what I found early in my career is that things can get complicated, right? And the more mature you get in the planning or the investment or the saving time of your life, you start needing more things from more people.
Right.
And it seems that the person that helped you get up that mountain in terms of savings isn't necessarily the same person that helps you get down.
Yeah.
So I generally put it like this, right? So if you go in and meet with your advisor for a review, which you should do on a quarterly basis, and you're at that pivotal point, as you just mentioned, of thinking about retirement, and you got questions like, when should I retire?
Yeah.
Do I have the assets to retire?
Right.
What is it going to cost me to retire, right? And your advisor is giving you some really good takeaways. You trust the advice, as you always have. But then you ask one question that is kind of a curveball.
Right.
And you say, okay, well, what is the taxation since I've never been taxed? Am I going to be taxed at a lower bracket or a higher bracket?
Yeah.
And that advisor, 9 times out of 10, should say, that's a great question, but you should go in and talk to your CPA.
Right.
And so you do, right? And so you finally make a call, and you didn't have a CPA, but now you have one.
Yeah.
You make that call, you spend an hour of your time with a CPA, and you got some good advice, you got your questions answered. Then at the end, you say, well, I'm at a point in my life where I don't know the differences between a will and a trust, and which one should I have? And that CPA, 9 times out of 10, would say, go talk to your lawyer.
Ugh.
Now you did. Now you're in your lawyer's office. He gave you some good takeaways, but at the end you say, this market is going crazy.
Yeah.
Right? Am I taking too much risk? I'm losing money.
Right.
That lawyer is going to say, go talk to who? Your financial advisor.
Yeah.
You're the person stuck right in the middle, trying to piece part these relationships. And the truth is, nobody seems to want to play nice in your sandbox. And so I tell you what we did. We built that system where we had everybody under one roof. We've got our lawyer right down the hall, the CPA down the hall, the tax flyer down the hall, your wealth advisor down the hall, your financial planner down the hall. One place, one-stop shop, as my clients call it. I like to call it holistic.
Yeah.
It just sounds cool.
I love this.
It's cool.
I love
it's a
this.
cool concept. And I tell you this, I know we're running short on time, but here's the big takeaway. We built all of those systems under one roof for the same cost, probably on a national average, as Fidelity would manage one piece of it.
Wow.
You leave your Fidelity office, you leave with some, no offense, but you leave your Edward Jones office, you leave with your investments that you're proud of, and they charge you a fee. Our firm does the same thing, but listen, fee-based only, but you get all of our services encompassing that don't cost you anything.
True.
Right? We want to file your taxes. We want to build your estate plan. We want to build your trust. No expense to you, right? Because these things need to get done. You need all those services.
And this is what really sets you apart from a lot of the others out there.
That's the value.
Yeah. And you're local, and I think people appreciate dealing with a local advisor versus somebody from who knows where.
California in your Navy.
Yeah,
right?
Who knows?
Let's
You're
just do
just
a
a
Zoom.
number to them maybe, right?
Right.
And
So it's
I would
difficult.
venture to guess you know a lot of your clients on a first name basis.
Walking through Kroger, right? I'm at Aldi.
Yeah.
Right? So, yeah, it's fun, right? And I enjoy doing that. I enjoy reaching out, and I enjoy saying, hey, they notice that. And I think it's the small things that's to the support. I definitely think at this time we are small enough to care and big enough to win.
Well, it's never too soon to start, right? So if somebody wants to get an appointment with you, what is the best way to go about it?
It is very simple. They pick up the phone, they give us a call. Our admin team will answer. So a lot of times I still like to answer the phone.
Yeah.
And just schedule a visit.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost a penny.
Yep. You can even text nowadays too.
Right below.
Yeah.
So.
Great information, Alex, as
you.
always. And
Pleasure.
make sure you stick around because we have a lot more coming up.
Coming up next on the Retirement Halftime Show, 3 potential ways to leave an inheritance to children who are minors. Here are the pros and cons of each plan. And making a difference in our community by honoring its past. Andrea Moorhead reports on an effort to recognize the brave pioneers who journeyed to Indiana for a better life. Text Alexander today and schedule a visit to discuss your financial goals for tomorrow and beyond. Text 707-ReJoyce.
The best coaches improve your game. Work with the best financial coach in the game. Alexander Joyce and ReJoyce Financial can get your retirement game plan in order. Call 317-903-9157 to schedule a visit now.
You're watching the Retirement Halftime Show, powered by ReJoyce Financial.
You're watching the Retirement Halftime Show. I'm your host, Alexander Joyce, and with me today is Alan Kowalski. He is our estate planning attorney and wealth strategist here at the practice. And we are doing part 2, right, of our 2-part series of estate planning and minors, if you will. And today we're really going to focus on the complexities in between guardians, if you will, and the child really inheriting, and what we mean by child, it is, kind of draw the picture of who you want your money and stuff to go to, right? And so when we think child, we're not just talking about a 1 to a 5-year-old or a 5 to a 10-year-old. Sometimes a child is, my son is 18 years old, right? Ready to inherit my life's work? I'd say not, right? We're looking at schools, right? Mm-hmm. And so there is a vision there, and there's a roadmap that I want my son to go down, right? Whether we derail or whether we stay on course, right? We have control of that. By dumping a bunch of things or something on him could just naturally, emotionally make that more impossible, if you will. Right. And so when we are leaving or considering the guardianship and that role or not role or trustee, what are the things, or what are the 3 things or the elements, if you will, and that we must consider?
Well, there's actually, thank you, Alex. Again, setting context. On a prior episode, we talked about appointing a guardian to take care of your child, to essentially step in as the parent over their person or their body, okay, for their health decisions, religious and educational decisions. Here, we're talking about, you also need to be thinking about, if you're gone, and you're gone prematurely, and particularly, and your child's inheriting from you, how do you want that money managed? Most certainly it's clear with minor children, young children, they're not going to manage the money.
Sure.
But you need to set that up. So there's really 3 different routes to go, and they've all got pros and cons and more varying degrees of control. But 3 ways that you can set up somebody to be in charge of managing your young child's inheritance. The first one is called a property guardian. Okay. The second one is to use a trust. And thirdly, we can pass property through, many of our viewers are probably somewhat familiar with the Indiana Transfers to Minors Act, the Uniform Transfers to Minors Act, as a way of passing, a lot of grandparents use that often to pass gifts to their grandchildren. But each one's got a benefit, and each one's got some disadvantages. But the first one, guardian over the property. If in your will you name a guardian over the property, that's fantastic. They're pretty much going to have control over the property to manage it on behalf of your child, pretty much a high degree of control over the property. But one of the downsides possibly to that, and you mentioned I think you've got a near 18-year-old or an 18-year-old, is at 18, that property is just going straight out to the kid. Right. Okay, so you got somebody to manage it while they're a minor, but at 18 it's going straight out to the kid. And secondly, we do have people who don't do anything. Don't name even a property guardian. In that case, the court is going to appoint a property guardian, but that guardian in that situation is going to have somewhat more limited control over the property than if you name the guardian, and there's going to be more back and forth and reporting requirements with the court,
I see.
and there's going to be costs associated with that.
Yeah.
Because that property guardian appointed is going to be, they're going to be able to get reasonable compensation. That's going to come out of the inheritance.
Right.
So first choice, we've got property guardian, whether the court names it or whether you name the property guardian. One of the potential downsides is your child's going to get that property at 18. Secondly, we can use trust. All right, so you can plan for this while you're alive and not expecting to die early. Right. You can create a living trust while you're alive, and or you can have a trust in your will, which we call a testamentary trust, that kind of comes into being when you pass. And by the terms of the trust, you pretty much got a blank slate for the benefit of that minor child to control the property pretty much through a trustee, however you'd like to. They can distribute the property for certain purposes. They can distribute the property for the child's health, education, maintenance, and support. They can distribute the property upon certain ages being attained, certain events occurring. Pretty much blank slate. Of course, what's probably an apparent downside, if you will, but it might be worth it for some clients, is a more administrative cost. More time, more work for the trustee.
Up front, right?
Well, even up front, both to create it and also once it's in place, and the trustee is over time managing that trust and filing tax returns, and that kind of thing.
Sure.
To hit the third way of doing this, you've got the property guardian and the trust. Thirdly, we've got leaving a bequest in your will under the Uniform Transfers to Minors Act in Indiana. You name a custodian. The custodian's got pretty wide discretion to do with that property while your child is a minor, whatever's prudent for the child. But in this case, at age 21, so it's a little less scary than the first option. At age 21, that property just goes outright to the child. And also in certain cases, and that's when the estate gets to a certain size, the court might enforce some overview.
I see.
Of the custodian's management of the property. But these are all very important decisions. Definitely plan for.
They're crucial, right?
Yes.
I mean, if not done, or a conversation is not had, I'm sitting here listening because you and I, this is, we talk all the time, but simply understanding these dynamics and these things, right? This platform of what people, the choices, right? The framework of decision making, it's powerful, and I think that. These situations happen. We've got clients that have walked in our office happily with their family, right? Made decisions, and I'm going back a decade, and we fast forward to today, and the family dynamic has changed, right? People have exited their life, right? Sooner than they expected.
Yeah.
People have come in their life sooner than expected, and I think that. Along with this market, right? I mean, we never expected banks to collapse. We never expected anything, but and there's never a good time to do things in life, right? But we do these things happen. Yeah. And I think we must prepare and we must plan and we must take a proactive approach. And so that's exactly what the philosophy is of our practice is plan first, invest later. So listen, Alan, I appreciate your time and I appreciate you being here, a part of the team. Our audience appreciates you. We'll keep marching, right? And changing lives and making a difference. Yep. So stay tuned, folks. You're watching the Retirement Halftime Show.
Next, meet an Indiana family with a legacy going back nearly 2 centuries. How a new memorial will commemorate their past, inform the present, and inspire the future. Andrea Moorhead reports. And knowing when to make changes. Purdue basketball coach Matt Painter explains his approach to upending the status quo and how it relates to your financial well-being. Text Alexander today and schedule a visit to discuss your financial goals for tomorrow and beyond. Text 707-ReJoyce.
You're watching the Retirement Halftime Show, powered by ReJoyce Financial.
ReJoyce Financial gives back with Andrea Moorhead, highlighting the people and organizations making life better in our community.
You're watching the Retirement Halftime Show. I'm your host, Alexander Joyce, and with me today is Andrea Moorhead. She is our community impact anchor. And recently you had an opportunity, if you will, to interview one of the first African American settlement organizations, 5013Cs, if you will. Maybe tell me a little bit about that operation. How does it work?
This is an incredible story. It's a story of our history, the history of our nation, the history of our state. And a lot of times, Black history is sometimes left out. Sure. But this is an incredible story of perseverance. I had a chance to sit down with the ancestors of the Roberts settlement. Take a look and see if you can imagine Black pioneers. It's a family reunion! 10 years ago, I created the documentary, It's a Family Reunion. What's your story? It featured 3 branches of the Roberts family tree.
My dad's brother, daughter, is his mother.
Celebrating their traditions and love. After a genealogical study, Ancestry.com introduced new family members.
They've been observing. You probably thought they were part of the crew, but I want to introduce you to Chrissy Coleman and Kim Ogunki.
All from the ancestral tree rooted in Indiana.
The bonds are everlasting. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a great part of how we were grown up, that the importance of family and the family structure is so significant to our legacy.
This is one of the founders here, Hansel Roberts.
Imagine 3 Black pioneers in 1835.
Hansel is probably the one that we would consider sort of the patriarch, if you will, of all the founders.
Journeyed from Virginia and North Carolina with nearly 300 free people of color looking for a better life. And imagine Micajah Walden, Elijah Roberts, and Hansel Roberts purchasing land in Hamilton County.
He was the largest landholder at the time.
By the 1870s, they amassed 2,000 acres. This area was called Roberts Settlement, where their church still basks under the glowing sun.
So whenever you open the doors to the church, what do you feel? A lot of pride, humbleness, a lot of hope for what remains in the future for our settlement.
Lavella Hyder and Brian Glover are descendants of Roberts Settlement.
In the 1910s, annual reunions began to be held among Roberts and Winburn descendants.
You can feel the spirits of the early settlers in the pictures of those who return each summer since 1924 for their annual homecoming reunion, a celebration that honors the past.
What do you think people, if they've heard about the Roberts settlement, what maybe they don't know that they should know about? Our history is their history.
The history of this Indiana landmark, which was also used as a school and meeting house, includes stories of perseverance, resiliency, prosperity, and cooperation.
They were all here, I think, pulling for one another, celebrating each other's accomplishments. Mm-hmm. When someone needed something, helping that family out.
All right.
Before we start,
the family's values of community and collaboration are shared with people from all over the world who sit in the hallowed pews to learn about the early Indiana Black settlers.
Now we're limited by the resources that we have to open up the chapel, be here, greet people, or go somewhere else and meet you at your church or your civic club. But with the Legacy Walk, you can kind of come when you want to come. You can interact with it as much as you want to interact with it.
Imagine Roberts Settlement Legacy Walk. The accessible outdoor path begins at the Indiana State Historical Marker, looping through the west side of the chapel for a self-guided journey of Black pioneer history. 4 separate themed stations include Roots and Migration, Progress and Perseverance, Faith and Reverence, ending with Legacy and Footprints.
Hamilton County Tourism, who's been a great advocate and a great sponsor for us.
While a few companies have supported the Legacy Walk and Memorial with in-kind services, this nonprofit organization needs to raise $75,000 to break ground this year. Imagine, with photographs, documents, birth records, and other artifacts saved by the early settlers, they knew their story was special, perhaps foreshadowing their significance in history, and praying their families and all of us would answer the call.
The original Constitution of Roberts Settlement, when it was established, it was to preserve this legacy. So almost 100 years ago, somebody put that in writing, that was our job to do. Wow.
As hundreds of descendants from all over the world gather this summer for their 100th homecoming celebration, you too are the extended family of Roberts Settlement. Our ancestors are looking down and thanking us.
Your father, who passed away some years ago, I know he's happy for you and grateful for what the kids are doing, for the descendants. What do you think he would be saying and thinking right now?
I think he'd be really proud.
Your support honors and celebrates the past contributions of Indiana pioneers.
We'll likewise say, good job. Thank you for those shoulders as well.
As we continue building on their success.
We've already come a long, long way, and I hope it will be multiplied by another century and longer.
We are so thankful for those pioneers who came back in 1835. They really set the legacy, and the families of the Roberts Settlement, they continue to celebrate the legacy and the history. And you can also serve and give back to make sure that Imagine Black Pioneers, that this walk that it comes to fruition. So we certainly hope that you can help, and you can do so by going to our website.
Andrew Moorhead, you're watching the Retirement Halftime Show. Stay tuned. The best is yet to come.
Still to come, being empowered to make changes on the court and in your portfolio. Purdue coach Matt Painter talks about how to raise your value. Schedule a no-cost, no-obligation visit today.
Retirement isn't a game to lose. Follow Alexander Joyce in the ReJoyce Financial Playbook to win in retirement. Call 317-903-9157 and schedule a no-cost, no-obligation visit now.
You're watching the Retirement Halftime Show, powered by ReJoyce Financial.
Planning to win. Coaching strategies for financial success. Here's Alexander Joyce and Butler University Athletic Director, Barry Collier.
You're watching the Retirement Halftime Show. I'm your host, Alexander Joyce, and with me today is Matt Painter, head basketball coach here at Purdue. And as we always say, the theme of the show is you wouldn't play a game the second half the same way you would the first, especially if you've got the lead. So let's just jump right in. A lot of times with our clients, we're doing reviews, right? And a big question we get is how often should we review the plan? And I'm sure in your business, if you will, right, business, it's the same, probably maybe more consistent than our reviews, because you're probably reviewing, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, I guess tell us, how often are you reviewing the game after the game?
You're reviewing it a lot. In terms of individual games, you're always, watching that game, clipping it, showing your guys. But at the end of the season, you're looking at, the changes you should make. Because I always try to change offensively with our personnel. Defensively, I don't change as much. That's important, because you have, who somebody is as a freshman and who they are as a sophomore is sometimes two totally different people.
I can imagine.
Yeah, our last three All-Americans here were all three sophomores. And it was just, you're just not quite ready. How can you be great at something you've never been through? And you're like, well, you played basketball before. Yeah, but you haven't played college basketball.
Yeah, right.
You see it in the NBA all the time. You'd be like, well, this coach doesn't play rookies.
Yeah.
You're just like, well, he has someone who's, 32 years old and's been in the league for 11 years. Instead of the person's got to learn. Well, that coach wants to win too. And so a lot of times organizations oh, this is a great young player. We're going to grow with him. And if you're in that position, then great.
Right.
And so it's a little bit different in college because your window's shorter. And so now those guys oh, it's not going to work for me. Not very many guys are just great when they're 18, 19 years old and they're playing against 22-year-olds, 21, 22, 23-year-olds.
Right.
So with that, you got to be able to look and say, what's best for our guys? What's best for this group of guys? Now, this worked last year, and so there's stuff you'll go back and say, hey, we're going to run about 60 to 70% of the same stuff. But since our personnel changed, we're going to do these things. Now, where are we vulnerable on the defensive end?
Yeah.
What are the things that we think we're not going to be as good at? Well, let's give that more work. Let's give that more work than then. You're not always right. You're probably right more than you're wrong in those areas because you've just done it a while.
Yeah.
But those are the type of things that you look at. And once again, be honest about your mistakes. If I had to do this over again last year, what would I have done differently?
Right.
And a lot of times it's not as much schematic things about basketball. It's more in terms of, each guy. Like I don't know if I reached him. Like one of those things. Like I'm always more critical of myself than I am them. Like I can fix me. I know that. I can try my best to fix you, but that requires a willing participant. That requires you wanting to do that. But I know this, I can fix me. So my mistakes have to get fixed. Now as we grow, you're trying to, you really want to empower your guys. I always talk about that. Like, if you're trying to do what we're asking you to do, I'm going to empower you.
Sure.
Like this is your program. And if you're not going to do what we're asking you to do, but yet you're a really, really talented guy, so like you're still going to play, right? Because you're really talented. Now, if you're not going to do what you're supposed to do and you're kind of middle of the pack, you're probably not playing then.
Right.
So you don't want to be hypocritical. Like you want to just be honest with guys and just tell them that. We will manage you then. And that sounds terrible, right? But it's kind of the way it is.
It's like, signed up for.
But a lot of times coaches, you don't like to speak on that. I speak on it. It's like, I want to empower you.
Yeah.
I want this to be yours.
Right.
But with that being said, you have to be able to, do that, and you got to be engaged. And that's what it's, commitment is 100 or 0.
It's
like
true.
when you're committed, like if you're a little bit out, you're out.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, and so like that slowly breaks a team down. It just does. And that's a lot of that immaturity and that youthfulness when people first start. So if you still have that after 2-3 years, it's probably who you are. Yeah. If you have it right away, then you can, break that down for a guy and say, hey, here's how you're going to grow.
Yeah,
like you got to understand this. If you want to be a good college player and then grow into a good pro, you got to be able to help them win.
Right.
It's
true.
You got to be able to help them win. Just like you got to be able to help us win. So the number one thing they look at is, does your team win?
Right.
So just don't get away from that.
Yeah,
It's like I always talk about, can't look past your own nose.
Right.
Like you got to be able to look at that and say, Purdue winning is going to help me. It's going to raise my value. They're going to look at me like, hey man, he's tough, he's resilient, he's a winner.
Right.
He has sacrificed, because you're probably not leaving college and rolling into the NBA and being one of the main guys. You're going to fight for a rotation spot.
That's it.
And if you do get it, you're a role player. And now if we have built those things up and you understand those things already, now you're used to it. You don't care. You got drafted by the Pelicans. I'm going to do everything in my power for the Pelicans to win. And if you think that way, and if you're just constantly not getting an opportunity and you think, man, like, I'm just, getting a raw deal here. Like they're just like not giving me opportunity. Instead of just saying, I just got to keep working.
Right.
I got to stay process based.
Right.
I got to keep doing the little things.
Yeah.
I got to come early. I got to stay late. I got to be a good teammate. I got to cheer. Now, when my opportunity comes, I'm in good headspace. Now you're in good headspace. It's like a worker. Like, it can't be your boss's fault all the time.
Yeah, right.
Like, you know what I mean? It just can't. Like, you can't get into employment. You got to learn to get along with people. But you also got to learn, like, hey man, this is what he said. This is what she said.
Right.
They're in charge. I got to do my job here. My college coach, Gene Cady, he called it a company man. He goes, are you a company man? Do you do what's best for the company? And he just says, learn to be a company man. He goes, and you'll always have a spot in employment. And I was like, man, I was 19 years old. That's crazy.
Yeah, right.
Like, that's crazy. And then all of a sudden you start to get older and you're like, that's dead on. And that's perfect. That's what it's about, because now you're giving yourself for a bigger and better cause.
True. I mean, I love that. That is strong. Thank you for watching the Retirement Halftime Show. If you have questions about today's show, give us a call, send us a text, or go to our website. Most importantly, maintain your lead in retirement. I'm Alexander Joyce, and I'll see you next time.